Hello viewers, happy to see you again. In this video, we are going to learn about Indian Constitution, its articles and parts. So before learning about the articles and parts which is there available in the Indian Constitution, it is our prime duty to understand the preamble of Indian Constitution. So what is preamble? A preamble, which means an introduction, or it can be treated as a preface to our Indian Constitution. And in preamble, in the Indian Constitution, we have the reflection of our dreams and then aspirations. It was first adopted in the year 1949, and it was enforced on 26 January 1950, when we declared ourselves as a republic. And when we talk about preamble, it is important to remember certain words. So these key words are very, very important because the entire constitution is focusing only on those aspects. So sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, justice, liberty, and fraternity. So if you are the citizen of this country, you must know certain, and above all, you should know about the Indian Constitution. So it is very important for any citizen of this country. So let us focus what is given in the Indian Constitution. So totally we have 22 parts in Indian Constitution, and we have 395 articles. And we have more than that, and we have that as an amendment. So it is indicated with the alphabets A, B, C, D, E, F. It goes on like that. So every time when there should be some changes, after getting the approval from the houses, we keep adding certain. Okay, so that can be treated as an amendment, and certain amendments will be added slowly, okay, with an alphabet below to the article which is already written. Okay, so it is not a correction, it is an updation. So every day, every time, based on the requirement of citizens of this country, we focus on their requirements, and based on that we add more value to our Indian Constitution. So we have 22 parts and 395 articles, base articles. And in part 1, Article 1 to 4, that talks about union and its territory. So union government and its territory. So how it has to function, all those things we have discussed in the Article 1 to 4. In part 2, from Article 5 to 11, it talks about citizenship. So to identify who is the citizen of this country, or how to get citizenship, or whether we have multiple citizenships, as it discussed. And in part 3, from Article 12 to 35, we are talking about fundamental rights. So fundamental rights of an individual citizen. So how fortunately we could survive, and what are the rights? Okay, so how can I protect myself, or how can I lead my life happily, as they have discussed in Article 12 to 35. And in part 4, from Article 36 to 51, it talks about directive principles of state policy. So how fortunately a state government with the power, because we have a number of states here in India, so how a state government can function individually or independently. So as what are the powers that we have, as it discusses about. And in part 4A, we are talking about fundamental duties in the Article 51A. Okay, so in the Article 51A, we are talking only about the fundamental duties of citizens. Okay, duty of citizens, and it talks about the government as well. So it is a collective duty. And in part 5, from Article 52 to 151, it talks about the union. Okay, so what are the powers, what are the requirements, how fortunately they could function, as all those ideas were discussed in Article 52 to 51. In part 6, from Article 152 to 237, it talks about the state. So state government, how fortunately they have to plan execution, the government, and what are the rights they have, what are the powers they have, as like it discusses about. And in part 7, Article 238, it talks about the states in part B of the first schedule. As like in the previous the previous article, it talks about the powers, and then it talks about the enforcements of law in the state, and then functioning of the same. Okay, in the part 7, Article 238 talks about that. And part 8, from Article 239 to 244, it talks about the union territories. So union territories functionality and all those things were discussed in this. And in part 9, from Article 242 to 243O, which means, in the alphabetical order A to O, it talks about Panchayat. So Panchayat, how it is formed, and how the leaders are elected. Okay, the chairman is being elected, and how it has to distribute the fund sanctioned by the government, as like it talks about. It talks about the functionality of the Panchayat. And part 9A, it talks about municipality, and it is from Article 243P, that is an alphabet, and from P to 243ZZ. Okay, so after completing Z, it starts with ZA, ZB, as like it goes on. So it is being calculated from Article 243P to 243ZZ. Okay, it talks about municipality. So again, as like a panchayat, the functioning of municipality and the powers of municipality, choosing the leader, as like it talks about. And 9B, it talks about cooperative society. So we have a lot of cooperative societies in every state, in every city. So the Article 243ZH to 243ZT, it talks about cooperative societies. And part 10, from Article 244 to 244A, it talks about the schedules and tribal areas. So what powers we have supposed to give, as like it goes on. And in part 11, Article 245 to 263, it talks about the relationship between union and then states. So how fortunately it has to cooperate. That union government supposed to cooperate with the state government, and the state government, if there is any requirement from their side, from the union side, how fortunately they have to sanction, and how fortunately maintain the cordial relationship, as like it talks about. And in part 12, from 264 to 300A, it talks about finance, property, contracts, and suits. So it is all about if you are purchasing a land, if you are paying your tax, it comes under, okay, it comes under Article 264 to 300A. It is discussed in part 12. In part 13, it talks about commerce, especially. From Article 301 to 307, it is all about how fortunately you can start trade, and how fortunately you could increase your commerce intercourses within the territory of India. So there are some of a list of rules or instructions to be followed. It discusses only about that. And in part 14, from Article 398 to 323, it talks about the service under the union and the state government. So what are the services provided? So what are the benefits the citizens are getting? Okay, all those things are discussed. And in part 14A, it talks about tribunals, and it is from Article 323A to 323B. And in part 15, it talks about election, the most important article, and the Article 324 to 329. So it is all about election. So how the election commission has to function, and what are the powers of the election commission, and then election commissioner, as like election commissioner, as like it discusses about the most important part as well as the most important article. And 16 Article 330 to 342A talks about social provisions relating to these certain classes. So to certain people, to a certain group of people. So what are the social provisions? In what way a state government or the central government can help, as like it discusses about. And in part 17 it talks about, from Article 343 to 351, it talks about official languages. So especially it talks about Hindi and English. So how it has to implement, and in what way it can be done, as like it discusses. And in part 18, it is a very important article again. Okay, so Article 352 to 360 talks about emergency provisions. During emergency, who will take charge of this country and how this country has to operate it. So certain things we could see in this part, in the Article 352 to 360. And 19, it is all about miscellaneous in the sense, altogether whatever being added, or what are the missed ones, as like it focuses on maximum. Okay, whatever issues. Okay, so from very small issue to the very big ones, as like it discusses about, from 361 to 367. And 20th, amendment of the Constitution. So what are the amendments? So how an amendment has to be implemented, as like it talks about only about the amendments in the Article 368. And 21, it talks about from Article 369 to 392, temporary, transitional and special provisions. So to whom the special provisions, allowances, all those things, it talks about. And 22, Article 393 to 395, it talks about short titles, commencement, authoritative text in Hindi and repeals. So it talks about all those things, and this is how our constitution is framed, and it helps in understanding for each issue there will be a solution in our constitution under the articles or under the amendments. So how fortunately you understand our constitution, and how fortunately you implement certain. Okay, you should implement as well as you should follow the constitutional law. So in the next video we will be talking about all those parts and then articles, about these articles in detail. Happy learning. Have a nice day. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe and share this video with your friends. Thank you. We'll meet you again. Bye bye.